Welcome to our first distance education session for economics. This is your instructor Malik Harbawi, and today we will discuss chapter 3, and this is its first part. It's divided to two parts. So in this part we will discuss, you can say, the introductory part of interdependence and the gains from trade. Consider your usual day, just any day that you wake up and start your normal activities. Your belongings, the things that you use on daily basis, check them out. Are they produced in one country? Are they produced locally? Are they produced in just one country from abroad? The answer is most likely not. You may find things or items that you use within or during your normal day produced in dozens of countries, or maybe more. And the idea is exactly because that we as a society usually have this kind of scenario of interdependence with other communities. And in order for us to understand why communities or societies do depend on each other, we need to discuss the topics to come, the slides to come. Now, the idea, before I go further, the idea of producing an item in one nation, not in another, will come later on. We will discuss it. However, it is a reality that we face every day. Items produced in one nation, used in another nation, or in one society, used in another society. Now, we may ask a question. The essence of economics, or the idea of economics, is exactly about making decisions, or the decisions made by the household. And we said that we can generalize it for the community, the whole community, or the society. So societies make decisions about what? About producing things, goods and services, and also distributing these goods and services. And the production and the distribution in this case, both of them are made for what? To satisfy the members of the community or the members of the society. In order for us to do this task properly, we need to look up two main things. The first one is, can certain society be economically self-satisfied? That means they produce what they consume, or they consume what they produce. Or should that society produce whatever it can produce best and trade with other nations or other societies and have that interdependence as a norm in their community? So the idea actually is the global economy, the interdependence. It is not usually common to have self-sufficiency or self-satisfaction of certain society other than interdependence. So this is the norm, and we will discuss why. As I said earlier, individuals and nations rely actually on what they do best. So they specialize in things. Why they rely on such a thing? Because they save their time and effort to produce what they are specialized in. And then they do what? So they specialize in, let's say, 2 or 3 goods, or let's say 10 or 20. However, these are not all the goods that the community or the society requires. In that case, they will request, or in other words, we call it import, their items or goods that they are in need of from other communities and export or send abroad or exchange the products that they have already produced and they are producing in the best way, better than other nations, with the nations that they import their required items or their needed items from. And why do we need to do that? Remember that we have the problem of scarcity of resources. So we may have some raw material that is not available in one nation and available in the other, or we may have set of skills available in one nation, not available in another nation or society. So let's go to two main questions that the whole chapter relies on. Why is interdependence the norm? Why is it the norm? Why do not we have self-satisfaction for each nation? And what determines the production and trade? In order for us to answer this question, we go back to the specialization. As I said earlier, people are better off when they specialize. That means we give the task for those who do it best. We keep it for them, and we do the thing that we do best. We save time and effort, maybe also raw material or input factors of production. So how about the pattern of production and trade? In basic sense, the decisions here are made based on opportunity cost or the opportunity costs of production. Now, nations may go for producing things, goods and services, based on the opportunity cost. And you remember from the first chapter, opportunity cost is what we must give up or what must be given up in order to obtain some item. It could be money, it could be time, it could be both, it could be some other thing. So we think about the opportunity cost of producing certain item. If we're going to lose too much or give up too much to produce it over taking it from another nation, then we go for taking it from another nation, buying it, importing it. And we produce what we can produce best. So this is what determines the pattern of trade. Now, in order for us to elaborate further and explain about why trade is important and why interdependence is the norm in a practical way, we can have this parable, which is an imaginary story or scenario, but it can be applied to a nation. Remember that in modeling of economy, we studied it in chapter 2, that we can disregard a lot of factors in certain community or certain economical scenario in order for us to model it. So imagine that we have two goods, potatoes and meat. So potatoes here and meat could be replaced by any other. It's just an imaginary assumption. And these two items or goods, potatoes and meat, are produced by two individuals or two persons, a farmer and a rancher. And these two are just dedicating their time and effort to produce only potatoes and meat. So, what should each of them produce? This is an important question. Should the farmer produce potato only and exchange his or her potato with the rancher for meat? Or should the farmer produce both potatoes and meat at the same time? The same question goes to the rancher. Should rancher produce meat and exchange this meat for potatoes with the farmer? Or should the rancher just produce meat, both meat and potato at the same time and not exchange anything? So this is the idea of trade. Should they just produce and consume what they are producing, or should they trade? Let's see. Now, what we are providing here is imaginary, but it applies to reality. It's possible to apply it to communities or societies. Now, this is an assumption that the farmer works for 8 hours per day, and in 60 minutes or each hour, he can produce an ounce of meat or 4 ounces of potatoes. So, in order for the farmer to produce an ounce of potato, he needs 15 minutes, and an ounce of meat requires 1 hour or 60 minutes. So in 8 hours, that is the working day of both of them. We assume that they work equally. The farmer, the farmer could produce either 8 ounces of meat in total if he dedicates all his time to producing meat, or 32 ounces of potatoes if he dedicates all his time to produce only potatoes. And you remember, this is the production possibilities frontier. So the production possibilities frontier is a straight line, is not curved like the previous chapter 2 we explained. Why? Because here we have, you can say, a fixed slope in this case. Let's not go to mathematics, it's just a fixed slope. And this slope obtains for us just a straight line. Let's say the farmer decides to use or pick up point A for producing 16 ounces of potatoes and 4 ounces of meat per working day, or 8 hours. That means his working day. The rancher produces 1 ounce of meat in 20 minutes and 1 ounce of potatoes in 10 minutes. And as you can see, this person is faster. Well, we will speak about it in a while. So in 8 hours, the rancher can produce 24 ounces of meat or 48 ounces of potatoes, or a combination of both. So the rancher decides to go for a combination of both, 24 ounces of potatoes and 12 ounces of meat. So you may ask me, what is it all about? Why are you explaining to us this kind of scenario and the possibilities frontier, or the production possibilities frontier for both ranchers and farmer? The idea is like this. We get back to the question. If we consider self-sufficiency, that means the farmer produces what he consumes, then this is exactly the production possibilities frontier, or the consumption possibilities frontier. Why? Because this individual, the farmer, produces what he consumes, and the same goes to the rancher. Now it is possible that they produce whatever they consume whatever they produce, and this is without trade. So we will not gain anything in this case. They will just self-satisfy themselves and move on. Well, this is the what I mentioned earlier, the production possibilities frontier of the farmer. Just keep in mind 4 and 16, the point that the farmer picked for his production, and any point on this straight line is optimal in terms of production. Anything inside, we mentioned before, that is inefficient, outside is not possible. We may shift the line due to technology or whatever, but it's not possible to obtain anything outside beyond it, The same goes to the rancher. The rancher's production possibilities frontier, and the rancher picks up somewhere in between 24 ounces of potatoes and 12 ounces of meat per day. Well, specialization and trade. Now, as I said earlier, should the farmer produce potatoes only? Should the rancher produce meat only? Should they produce a combination of both and just self-satisfy themselves? Should they specialize in producing one thing and then they trade? So as I said, we need some scientific explanation in terms of this economical problem. All right, let's discuss this summary. In summary, because we will need these numbers, the farmer can produce 4 ounces of meat and 16 ounces of potatoes every day, every working day. That means just 8 hours, we assumed. And the rancher can produce 12 ounces of meat and 24 ounces of potatoes for his working or her working day. All right, now let's think about a trade, not just self-sufficiency. The rancher says to the farmer, imagine, this is an imaginary scenario. Wait a minute. How about if you stop producing meat at all? Do not produce any. Just dedicate your whole day to produce potatoes. And in this case, you will produce 32 ounces. Okay, the farmer said, okay, then what? What is in return of what? The rancher said, good. If you stop producing any meat, that you will lose 4 ounces of meat, right? The farmer said, okay, that's true. Your calculation is correct. Then the rancher says, okay, I will give you 5 ounces. The farmer says, what will be the cost? The rancher says, you will give me in return 17 ounces of potatoes. In that case, the rancher says, in that case, you will be able to produce per day more than the usual common days. Not 17, I'm sorry. The rancher requests 15, not 17, I'm sorry. 17 would remain with the farmer. So the rancher is requesting 15 ounces of potatoes as a return for the 5 ounces of meat that he or she will give up to the farmer. So the farmer says, in this case, I will be receiving 17 ounces of potato plus 5 ounces of meat. That is more than my normal day. 17, 5. Earlier it was 16 and 4. So he thought, it is good, but is it too good to be true? The rancher said, no, there is no problem. I will show you my calculation. Now look at this. Since you are dedicating all your working day to just produce potatoes, and you will produce 32 ounces, you will give up 15 of them to me. All right, I'll take your 15 ounces of potatoes. And what I will do, I will produce 12 ounces of potatoes and 18 ounces of meat per day. Receive your 15 ounces of potatoes, so 12 plus 15, that's 27, more than 24 before I was receiving or I was getting. And at the same time, I'm producing 8 ounces of meat with this calculation, with this, you can say, point at this point. I will give up 5 of them. So I will keep 13 ounces of meat, which is more than my previous production. So point B and point B star show you the difference. While the farmer says, well, it is good. Will it work? The rancher says it is perfectly fine according to this calculation, and there is no problem with it. So they say, okay, let's go ahead and do it, since it is benefiting both of us. In that case, let's just look at the summary. Initially, 4 ounces of meat for the farmer and 16 ounces of potatoes. This is the point that the farmer picked for the production. And 12 ounces of meat and for 24 ounces of potatoes for the rancher. Now, without trade, there is no gain of any. I mean, they just consume or produce whatever they consume whatever they are producing. However, now let's just think about this. When they trade, the rancher said to the farmer, do not produce any meat. Okay, 0 ounce of meat, all your working day dedicated to 32 ounces of potatoes. Give up 15. You're still having 17 of these ounces, more than 16 before. And I will manage my time like this. I'll produce 18 ounces of meat and 12 ounces of potatoes. I'll get 15 from you, so I'm getting 12 plus 15, that's 27. And I'll give up from these 18 ounces, 5 ounces, I'll keep 13. So in total, you will receive 5 ounces of meat, more than 4. 17 ounces of potatoes, more than 16. I'll keep 13 ounces of meat, more than 12. And I will get 27 in total, more than 24 ounces of potatoes. So both parties are winning from the trade. It's a win-win situation. So the total, you can say the increase in consumption, or actually the benefit of the trade, or the gains from the trade, 1 ounce of meat for the farmer, 1 ounce of potato for the farmer, 1 ounce of meat for the rancher, 3 ounces of potato for the rancher. Well, before I end up this discussion, You may ask yourself, how did it happen? What kind of factor comprised or made us get these gains, or made the rancher and the farmer gain from trade? And this will be the topic of the next session. I hope you will enjoy this session, and soon enough I will record and post or upload the second video. Have a good time. Goodbye.